سلام، امیدوارم که خوب باشین. من خواستم که زبان یاد بگیرم. قضیه اینجا شروع شد. من خواستم که زبان یاد بگیرم و با خودم فکر کردم که خب چجوری ما زبان یاد گرفتیم، زبان فارسی رو یاد گرفتیم یا بهترش کردیم. یکی از جدی ترین چیزاش کتاب خوندن بود. یعنی آدم‌هایی که کتاب می‌خوندن بهتر صحبت می‌کردن، کلمات بیشتری داشتن برای بیان کردن و به نظرم رسید میتونه راه موثری باشه که کتاب بیشتر بخونم. و احتمالاً اگر کتاب رو با صدای بلند بخونم میتونه خیلی بیشتر بهم کمک کنه. تصمیم گرفتم این کارو بکنم و ویدیو ریکورد کنم از این اتفاق که هم انگیزه بیشتری داشته باشم، هم خب پابلش کنم. شاید بعضیا خواستن که گوشش بدن یا اینکه ببینن ویدیو رو یا اینکه ببینن که چطوری میشه کتاب رو سریعتر خوندش و حالا به هر شکل دیگه. این اولین قسمت این ویدیوه و کتاب آرزوهای بزرگ رو انتخاب کردیم به خاطر اینکه خب یه چیز عمومیه، همه میشناسنش، احتمالاً خیلی خوب و بد نداره، اثر کلاسیکیه و خوندیم و رفتیم جلو. امیدوارم که استفاده کنید. فقط به من بگید که آیا به عنوان بیننده جذاب بوده این ویدیو براتون یا کمکی تونسته بهتون بکنه اینکه یکی از کتاب رو بخونه و شما گوشش بدین و همراه اون برید جلو. مرسی، لذت ببرید.
خب کتابی که انتخاب کردیم اینجا کتاب آرزوهای بزرگ چارلز دیکنزه. کتاب خیلی معروفیه اما احتمالا خیلی نخوندیمش و بر همین انتخاب کردم که این رو بخونم. احتمالا متن روانی داره به خاطر اینکه کتاب تا حدودی قدیمیه و پیچیدگی های متون جدید داستانی رو نداره، روایت های تو در تو احتمالا نداره و یک متن روان سبکیه. واسه اولین انتخاب این رو انتخابش کردیم. خب که از اپلیکیشن دهکده زبان من استفاده میکنم به خاطر اینکه هر جا لازم شد کلمه‌ها رو هایلایت کنم و بذارم توی فلش کارت که بعد هم بشه مرورش کرد. شما هم میتونید همین کارو بکنید. خیلی خب کتاب رو از اول شروع میکنیم و جا کلماتی که مشخص نبود رو هم من معنیش رو حالا به انگلیسی اگر که حس کردم که روون نیست و ممکنه نفهمید به فارسی میگم. My first name was Philip, but when I was a small child I could only manage to say Phip یا Pip. So Pip was what everybody called me. I lived in a small village in Essex with my sister who was over 20 years old than me and married to Joe Gregory, the village blacksmith. My parents had died when I was a baby, so I could not remember them at all, but quite often I used to visit the churchyard, about a mile from the village, to look at their names on their gravestones. My first memory is of sitting on a gravestone in that churchyard one cold, grey December afternoon, looking out at the dark, flat, wide marshes divided by the black line of the river Thames, I don't know, and listening to the rushing sound of the sea in the distance. We are some new words. Wild marshes. Marshes mean an area of low-lying land which is flooded in wet seasons or at high tide and typically remains waterlogged at all. For example, the marsh marigold loves downfield riverbank and marshes. Botlock, murdab. Rush means a sudden, quick movement toward something, typically by a number of people. A sudden, quick movement towards something, typically by a number of people. یورش. For example, there was a rush for the door. A sudden flow or float. A flurry of hasty activity. A sudden strong demand for a commodity. I repeat again, my first memory is of sitting on a gravestone in that churchyard one cold grey December afternoon, looking out at the dark, flat, wide marshes divided by the black line of the river Thames, and listening to the rushing sound of the sea in the distance. Looking out at the dark به بیرون نگاه میکنم که تاریک و صافه و اون مرداب وحشی توسط رودخانه خط سیاه رودخانه تامز دو تیکه شده و به هجوم صدای دریا در فاصله دور نگاه میکنم. Okay. Don't say a word, cried a treble voice as a man jumped up from among the graves and catch hold of me. If you shut, I will cut your throats. We have a new word. Throats. Throats mean the passage which lead from the back of the mouth of a person or animal. گلو خرخره. If you shut, I will cut your throat. He was a big man dressed all in grey with an iron chain on his leg. His clothes was wet and torn. We have new word. Torn. Turn. Past participle of torn and tear. Tear means a hole or split in something caused by it having been pulled apart forcefully. کندن. A hole or a split in something caused by it having been pulled apart forcefully. Okay, repeat again. His clothes was wet and torn. پاره پوره. He looked exhausted. New word.
Exhausted.
Very means very tired. He looks exhausted and hungry and very fierce. We have a new word, fierce. Fierce means having or displaying a violent or ferocious aggressiveness. Ferocious. Okay. Fierce. Having or displaying a violence. نمایش خشونت دیگه. درنده. He looked exhausted and hungry and very fierce. I had never been so new word. Frightened. Afraid or anxious. Afraid or anxious. هراسیده ترسیده. I had never been so frightened in my whole life. هیچ وقت اینقدر نترسیده بودم. Oh, don't kite my truths. گلو. Truths. Sir, I begged in terror. Beg means ask someone earnestly or humbly for something. In terror. Terror means extreme fear. Tell me your name, boy. Quick, he said, still holding me and show me where you live. My name's Phip, sir, and I live in the village over there. He picked me up and turned me upside down. Nothing fell out of my pocket except a piece of old bird. Piece. He ate it in 2 bits like a dog and put me back on the gravestone. So, where are your father and mother? He asked. There, sir, I answered, pointing to their graves. What? He cried, and was about to run when he saw where I was pointing. Oh, he said, I see. There is dead. Well, who do you live with if I let you live? Which I haven't decided yet. I repeat again. I see. There is dead. Well, who do you live with if I let you live? Which I haven't decided yet. با کی زندگی میکنی اگر بذارم که زندگی کنی که هنوز تصمیم نگرفتم. With my sister, sir, wife of Gregory, the blacksmith. Blacksmith, you say? And he looked down at his leg. Then he held me by both arms and stared fiercely down to my eyes. Fiercely. از روی درنده خوی حریصانه. No. Look here. You bring me a file. File means in this story file means سوهان صاف کردن ساییدن. I haven't in dictionary. You bring me a file. You know what this is. And you bring me some food. If you don't, or if you tell anyone about me, I'll cut your heart out. I promise I'll do it, sir, I answered. I was badly frightened, and my whole body was trembling.
Trembling
means tremble. A trembling, fling movement or sound. لرزیدن، لرزش. I was badly frightened. Frightened. And my whole body was trembling. You see, he continued, smiling up pleasantly. Unpleasantly. ناخوشایند زننده. discomfort, unhappiness. Smiling unpleasantly. Smiling unpleasantly. I travel with a young man, a friend of mine, who roasts boy, herds and eats them. He'll find you wherever you are, and he'll have you hurt. So bring the file and the food to that wooden shelter over there early tomorrow morning. If you want to keep your heart, that is, remember, you promised. I watch him turn and walk with difficulty across the marshes, the chain hanging clumsily. Clumsy, but it's here, right? Clumsily. Okay, clumsy means backward in movement or in handling things. دست و پا چلفتی. Repeat again. I watch him turn and walk with difficulty across the marshes, the chain hanging clumsily around his leg. Then I ran home as fast as I could. Okay, next part. My sister, Mrs. Joe Gregory, was very proud of the fact that she had brought me up by hand. Brought me means bring. Bring means take or go with someone or something to a place. My sister, Mrs. Joe Gregory, was very proud of the fact that she had brought me up by hand. بار آوردن هم میشه با دست من رو بزرگ کردن دیگه. با دست ما رو با دست بزرگ کرد، من رو با دست بزرگ کرد. By hand. Nobody explained to me what this meant. And because she had a hard and heavy hand. کسی این معنی این قضیه رو توضیح نداده، به خاطر اینکه یه دست سنگین داره اونم. Which she used freely on her husband as well as me. I suppose that Joe and I were both up by hand. که کسی اینو برام توضیح نده، به خاطر اینکه یه دست سنگین و سختی داره که برای شوهرش هم از همون دسته استفاده میکنه، آزادانه از اون دسته استفاده میکنه. فکر میکنم که جو و من دوتامون با دست بزرگ شدیم. She was not a beautiful woman, being tall and thin, with black hair and eyes and a very red face. She clearly felt that Joe and I caused her a lot of trouble, and she frequently complained about it. فکر میکنه که من و جو که شوهرش باشه باعث یک سری مشکلات شدیم و complained about it و از این قضیه شکایت میکنه. Complain means express dissatisfaction or annoyance about something. شکایت کرد. Joe, on the other hand, was a gentle, kind man with fair hair and weak blue eyes, who quickly accepted her scolding. Quickly means in a quiet manner. Quiet means making little or no noise.
Quiet.
Quiet.
Quiet. Quiet.
Quiet and quiet.
Quietly.
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 Quietly. Her scalding. Scalding means scald, a woman who nags or grumble constantly. سرزنش کردن، پرخاش کردن. Because Joe and I were in the same position of being scalded by Mrs. Joe. We were good friends and Joe protected me from her anger whenever he could. So, when I ran breathless into the kitchen, he gave me a friendly warning. She's out looking for you, Phoebe, and she's got the stick with her. This stick had been used so often for beating me that it was now quite smooth. Just then Mrs. Joe rushed in.
Rush.
Oh, okay. A sudden quick movement towards something means rush. So Mrs. Joe rushed in. به سرعت وارد شد. Where have you been, you young monkey? She shouted. I jumped behind Joe to avoid being hit with the stick. Only to the churchyard, I whispered, starting to cry. Whisper. A soft means a soft or conditional tone of voice, a whispered word or phrase. پیچ کردن، نجوا کردن. Only to the churchyard, I whispered, starting to cry. به آرومی نجواگونه شروع به گریه کرد. Churchyard? If I hadn't brought you up, you'd be in the churchyard with our parents. اگه من بزرگت نمی کردم تو الان کنار خانوادمون توی قبرستون بودی. You will send me to the churchyard one day. Now let me get your super ready both of you. شما میگه که من رو میفرستین سینه قبرستون یه روز. حالا بذار که من شما رو آماده کنم، جفتتون آماده کنم. For the rest of evening I thought think and thought. For the rest of evening یعنی برای ادامه روز دیگه، برای استراحت ادامه روز. I think of nothing but the stranger at the marshes. به چیزی جز اون مرد غریبه داخل مرداب فکر نمی کرد. Sometimes as the wind blew around the house, گاهی اوقات که باد میوزه بیرون, I heard his voice outside. تصور میکنم که صداشو بیرون شنیدم. And I thought with horror of the young man who ate boys' hearts. به اون مرد ترسناک فکر میکنم که قلب بچه ها رو میخوره. Just before I went to bed, we heard the sound of a big gun on the marshes. Was that a gun, Joe? I asked. Oh, Joe said. Another convict. Another convict escaped. یه زندانی دیگه فرار کرد. One got away last night. They always fire the gun when one escapes. وقتی که دیشب که یکیشون فرار کرده بود، اونا همیشه یک شلیک میکنن وقتی که یکی فرار میکنه. دیشب هم یکیشون فرار کرده بود. Who fires the gun? I ask. چه کسی شلیک میکنه؟ Joe shook his head to warn me. سرشو به نشانه اخطار به من تکون داد. Too many questions. Frowned by my sister. Frowned. Frowned. If you must know, it's the men in the prison ship who fired the gun. میگه که اگر که میخوای بدونی، اون مردیه که پرزن شیپه دیگه، اون مرد داره شلیک میکنه، نگهبان زندان. I wonder who is put into prison ship and why. I ask in a general way, quietly, desperate to know the answer. Desperate, نومیدانه. Feeling or showing a hopeless sense that a situation is so bad as the impossible to deal with. This was too much for Mrs. Joe. Listen, my boy, I didn't bring you up by hand to annoy means make a little angry. رنج دادن، اذیت کردن. Make a little angry. Annoy. I didn't bring you up by hand to annoy people to death. There are ships on the river which are used as prisons. شیپ میگه که یه سری کشتی وجود داره روی رودخونه که به عنوان زندان استفاده میشه. اونجا هم که گفت پریزن شیپ، منظور زندان‌های کشتی‌های زندان بود، یه همچین چیز، زندان حبس، کشتی‌هایی که به عنوان زندان دارن استفاده میشه. People who steal and murder are put in the prison ships, and they stay there for years sometimes, and they always begin their life of crime by asking too many questions. No, go to bed. I could not sleep at all that night. I was in terror of young men who wanted my heart. I was in terror of the man with the iron chain. I was in terror of my sister, who would soon discover I had stolen her food. میگه که من از خواهرم هم میترسیدم، ترس شدید، که به زودی میفهمه که بو میبره، دیسکاور کشف میکنه I had stolen، غذاشو دزدیدم. As soon as there was a little light in the sky outside my window, I got up and went quietly down to the kitchen. I stole some bread, cheese, and a big meat pie, hoping that as there was a lot of food ready for Christmas, nobody would notice what was missing. غذاها رو واسه کریسمس آماده کرده و کسی دوست نداره که بفهمه که چیزی گم شده. کسی نباید بوی ببره. nobody would notice. I did not dare. Dare means a challenge, especially to prove courage. جرأت کردن. Have to courage to do something. I did not dare take the whole brandy bottle, so I poured some into a smaller bottle to take away with me. I pour ریختن. Flow rapidly in a steady stream. پاشیدن دیگه، ریختن و I did not dare take the whole brandy bottle. جرأت نکردم که کل شیشه برندی رو بردارم. So I poured some into a small bottle to take away with me. و هم ریختمش توی یه شیشه کوچکتر که با خودم ببرمش. Then I filled up the brandy bottle with what I thought was water from a big brown bottle. برای همین اون بطری برندی رو با آبی که با یه چیزی که فکر میکنم آب بودش از یک بیگ براون باتل، از یک بطری بزرگ قهوه‌ای پرش کرد. I took a file from jukebox of tools and ran out onto the dark marshes. The mist was so thick that I could not see anything. Also, I knew my way to the shelter very well. I almost got lost this time. I was near it when I was a woman sitting on the ground half asleep. میگه که مسیرم رو به سمت اون شلتر میشه محافظ، پناهگاه، به سمت پناهگاه خیلی خوب میدونستم. اما این سری گم شدم. I almost نزدیک اونجا شدم وقتی که دیدم که مردی تقریبا نیمه خواب اونجا نشسته. I went up and touched his shoulder. بلند شدم و اون شونش رو لمس کردم. He jumped up and it was the wrong man. پرید و در صورتی که مرد اشتباهی بود. He was dressed in grey too and had an iron chain on his leg. He ran away into mist. میگه همونجوری خاکستری پوشیده بود و زنجیر آهنی به پاش داشت و به سمت مه فرار کرد. It's the young man, I thought, feeling a pain in my heart. When I arrived at the shelter, I found the right man. وقتی برگشتم اون مرد درست رو پیدا کردم. He looked so cold and hungry that I felt sorry for him. خیلی گرسنه و سرد به نظر می رسید که باعث شرمندگی من شد. باعث شد که احساس شرمندگی بکنم براش. Trembling می شد شیک دیگه، لرزیدم. اگر که درست گفته باشم. لرزش. violently trembling violently he swallowed swallowed means an act of swallowing something, especially food or drink. فرو بردن، قورت دادن. Trembling violently, he swallowed the brandy and ate the food like a hunted animal, looking around him all the time for danger. به خیلی سخت لرزید وقتی که داشت اون برندی رو قورت داد و اون غذا رو شبیه یک حیوان دربند هانتد شکار شده خورد. Looking around him all the time for danger و همش دوربر نگاه میکرد واسه یه خطر. You are sure you didn't tell anyone or bring anyone؟ گفتش که مطمئنی که به کسی نگفتی و کسی رو نیاوردی؟ No sir, I'm glad you are enjoying the food. امیدوارم که از غذا لذت ببری. Thank you my boy. You've been good to a poor man. ممنونم ازت، برای یک مرد فقیر خوب بودی تو، خوبی کردی به یک مرد فقیر. But I'm afraid there won't be any left for him. اما میترسم که چیزی واسه اون نمونده باشه. I'm afraid there won't be any left for him. چیزی برای اون نمونده. Him? Who's that? My friend stopped in the middle of eating. The young man who travels with you. میگه که اون کیه دیگه؟ کی رو در مورد کی داری صحبت میکنیم؟ به غذا توقف کرد توی وسط غذا خوردن. بچه هم میگه که اون مرد جوانی که با تو سفر کرده بود. Oh him, he replied, smiling. He doesn't want any food. I thought he looked rather hungry, I answered. He stared at me in great surprise. Looked? When? میگه که he looked rather hungry، به نظر گرسنه می اومد و اون مردم گفت looked، به نظر می اومد کی، یعنی که فهمید که ما دیدیمش. Just now over there I found him half asleep and I thought it was you. He was dressed like you and I was anxious, feeling or showing worry. I was anxious to express this politely. He had the same reason for wanting to borrow a file. Then مرد میگه Then I did hear them fire the gun last night. You know, boy, when you are on the marsh alone at night, you imagine all kind of things. Voice calling, gun firing, soldiers marching. میگه وقتی که نصف شب تنها میای توی مرداب، تصور هر چیزی رو داشته باش، از صداهایی که میاد، شلیک هایی که میشه، سربازهایی که رژه میرن. But show me where this man went. I found him and I finished with him. I will smash his face. Give me the 5 first. اما بهم نشون بده که اون مرد کجا رفته. پیداش میکنم، کارمو باهاش تموم میکنم، صورتش رو اسمش میکنم.
Smash.
خرد و خاکشیر میشه. With a sudden violent shattering. صورتش رو خرد و خاکشیر میکنم. Give me the 5 first. اول اون سوهان رو بهم بده. I was afraid of him now that he was angry again. ترسیدم که دوباره داره عصبانی میشه. I'm sorry. I must go home now. باید برم خونه، ببخشید. He did not seem to hear. به نظر میرسه که نشنید. So I left him bending over his leg and filing away at his iron chain like a madman.
خب کلمات فصل رو اگه بخوایم یه بار دیگه با هم مرور کنیم.
stranger,
stranger،
stranger,
اجنبی، غریبه، خارجی.
در حالی که I left him ترکش کردم، در حالی که bending یعنی خم شده بود over his leg روی پاش and filing باید بشه احتمالاً این filing در حالی که خم شده بود bending over his leg خم شده بود روی پاش and filing away at his iron chain like a madman و شبیه یک دیوانه داشت سوهان میزد اون زنجیر آهنیش رو. Halfway home I stopped in the midst to listen and I could still hear the sound of the file. halfway نیمه راه میشه. نیمه راه خونه I stopped in the midst to listen. تو میانه راه وایسادم توی مه که گوش بدم و همچنان میتونستم صدای سوهان کشیدن رو بشنوم. خب این فصل اول کتاب آرزوهای بزرگ بود. امیدوارم که بنز کافی خوب شده باشه و قابل استفاده باشه که چه به عنوان پادکست چه به عنوان ویدیو نگاه کنید و کلماتی که با هم چک کردیم رو یاد گرفته باشید. ممنونم ازتون.
stranger, 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 stranger,
rush, 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 rush,
marsh, 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 marsh,
shout, 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 throat, 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 throat,
tear, 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 tear,
torn, 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 torn,
exhausted, 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 exhausted,
fierce, 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 fierce,
frightened, 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 beg, 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 terror, 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 terror,
Stare down. Stare down.
star, star, star,
fiercely, 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 fiercely,
file, 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 file,
promise, 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 promise,
trembling, trembling, trembling,
unpleasantly, 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 roast, 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 roast.
Clumsy, 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 clumsy. Proud, 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 proud.
Complain, 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 complain. Fair, fair, fair.
Quietly, quietly, quietly.
Scold, scold, scold.
Scolding, scolding, scolding.
Whisper, whisper, whisper.
Blow, blow, blow.
Convict, convict, convict.
Frown, frown, frown.
Desperate, desperate, desperate. Annoy, 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 annoy. Dare, dare, dare.
Pour, pour, pour.
Anxious, anxious, anxious.
Politely, politely, politely. Polite, polite, polite.
Smash, 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 smash. Seam, 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 seam.
Bending, 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 bending.
Filing, 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 filing.